Hey everyone, today we're going to take a trip to the absolute fringes of commerce. We're talking about markets that completely defy what you think of as normal, and they rewrite the rules of trade. We're about to see how survival, culture, and just plain necessity create these economies you probably never even knew existed.
So just for a second, picture a market where you're not buying, apples or bread. No. Instead, you point to a literal mountain of cash and say, yeah, I'll take 50 kilos of that. I know it sounds completely absurd, but in some parts of the world, that's just business as usual.
How about this? A bustling market, totally packed with people, but it's completely silent. No haggling, no shouting out prices. Every single deal is made without a single word, all based on a system of pure trust.
And what if your local shop sold not beef or chicken, but baskets of fried tarantulas? Look, these aren't just weird novelties. These are real, functioning markets. And they show us something really profound about human ingenuity.
Because here's the thing. What seems bizarre to us is often a perfectly logical, even brilliant, solution to a very unique problem. These markets are like windows into how communities survive, how they adapt, and how they thrive, sometimes against all odds.
So let's start where economics gets really, really strange. We're going to places where the actual money in your pocket loses its meaning, forcing people to come up with totally new ways to trade.
Okay, so in the self-declared state of Somaliland, hyperinflation has made the local currency, the shilling, almost worthless. And just to give you some perspective, it takes about 10,000 of them to equal a single US dollar. And this just perfectly illustrates what happens next. I mean, can you imagine counting out thousands of notes for a small purchase? It's impossible. So out in the open-air markets, currency itself becomes the commodity. People are literally selling stacks of shillings by weight, piled high in wheelbarrows and sacks. You can buy 50 kilograms of cash for about 10 US dollars. And the craziest part? There's no extra security. The money is almost worth more as paper than as actual currency.
But what happens when the problem isn't that money is worthless, but that you want to keep prices totally private? Well, in parts of Indonesia, we find the pasar bisu, which means silent market. And here, trade isn't about currency, it's all about community trust and deep-seated tradition.
The rules here are really something else. To make a deal, the buyer and seller put their hands under a cloth and negotiate using this secret system of finger touches. This whole method keeps prices completely private, which helps prevent jealousy and keeps the community in harmony. It's just a powerful reminder that commerce can be a cultural ritual, not just a financial transaction.
All right, now let's talk about food. Because what we think of as edible is so deeply tied to our culture, our environment, and our needs. And in some corners of the globe, the local menu is, well, let's just say it's a bit more adventurous than ours.
This proverb just perfectly captures the spirit of our next stop, the food markets of Colombia, where a common household pest actually becomes a pretty sought-after snack. Yep, you heard that right, spiders. In some local markets, tarantulas are sold by the basket, either raw or already fried up. And this is not some tourist gimmick, okay? It's a traditional protein-rich food source, born from an ecosystem where insects are an abundant and, frankly, logical part of the diet. And this isn't some isolated thing. An estimated 2 billion people around the world eat insects. As you can see, the reasons are super practical. They're a fantastic source of protein. But it's also about tradition. And what's really fascinating is seeing how this tradition is now going global, with insect-based snacks being marketed online as a sustainable superfood.
Sometimes a market is so much more than just a place to trade goods. Sometimes it becomes the main stage for a community's most important social rituals, defining their entire identity and heritage.
This brings us to a really complex and honestly often misunderstood tradition, the so-called bride market in Bulgaria. Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand this is not a market for selling people. It's an ancient social gathering for the marginalized Roma Kaladeji community. It's held 4 times a year, and this event is way less of a transaction and way more of a festival. In fact, it's one of the only chances for young people in this very conservative community to meet each other. Now, families do negotiate a dowry, but it's so important to see this through the lens of their reality. From a marginalized group that faces a lot of poverty, this tradition is a way to try and ensure their children's financial security and preserve their cultural identity against some really big social pressures. Okay, let's shift from social customs to a local economy built on a very different kind of tradition. In the village of Darra, Khel in Pakistan, the marketplace is famous for just one thing: handmade firearms. This isn't a factory town. This is a village of artisans where making weapons is a generational craft.
The process itself is just remarkable. Artisans collect scrap metal from dismantled ships and old cars, and using really basic hand-operated tools, they forge these intricate replicas of everything from pistols to AK-47s. For this village, this isn't just a business, it's their entire economy. It's this completely isolated ecosystem of skill and survival, passed down from father to son.
So, after seeing all these incredible examples, what's the common thread? What's the pattern here? Well, it's that human beings are just endlessly adaptable, creating these hyper-local economies to solve hyper-local problems.
And we see this pattern everywhere. In Bangladesh, for example, you've got the Savar market, where snakes are sold for traditional medicine. Then, right nearby, you might find a market for red ant eggs, not for people, but as a prized high-protein food for commercially farmed fish. Each one of these markets fills a really specific niche.
So whether it's weighing cash, trading in total silence, eating spiders, or forging weapons from scrap, none of this is strange just for the sake of being strange. These markets are powerful, living examples of communities adapting to their unique economic, cultural, and environmental realities. They make perfect sense right where they are.
Which really just leaves us with one final thought. Are these markets truly bizarre, or are they just a perfect, unfiltered reflection of the incredibly diverse and complex ways that humans find to survive, to connect, and to create value in every single corner of our world? It's something to think about.